All right, folks, I wanted to give you a tour of a free site called CommonLit. This is not one of those sites that is free only for a limited time. It's actually a site that was developed to be a free resource to teachers all the time, not just for the coronavirus. And it is just stacked with really great readings of all different genres that would be useful, especially in this new virtual learning environment that we are in right now, but also I think in the regular classroom environment when we're back to normal, for anyone who needs to assign ancillary readings. So this is good for English teachers, for history teachers, for theology teachers. And one of the reasons I really like it is its interactivity with Google Classroom. So the first thing, you don't need to be in Google Classroom to use CommonLit, but if you do and you have a class established, you are able to add a class to CommonLit through Google Classroom. So you can actually import classes from Classroom right into to CommonLit. Now, if you don't choose to go that route, but you still want to give students the option to join, if you create a class, it'll have no students, but then it gives you a class code. So students would create their own student account and then they would join your class here. And I encourage students always, because this is Google Interactive, to use their Google credentials to sign in. So when you first create an account, you have to say if you're an educator or a parent or a student. So you would have to go through all the steps as an educator, but once it's linked to your Marquette High email address, you can just log in with Google and it'll take you right to your account. So that's set up again under My Classes. You would go to Manage Classes, and that's where you would create the class or import the class from Google Classroom. Now, once you have students into a class, you have the opportunity to start looking for ways to get them engaged in reading. So you can see there are lots of different ways to look for content. Usually they have featured content that's based on things that are happening. I'm a little interested to see they have nothing related to coronavirus, but for the Spanish teachers, they have Spanish literary texts, they have science and technology articles. Things are leveled by their readability, so you can see all of them will have that Lexile score, and then they'll have a grade level attached to those. So for Black History Month, they have a whole collection of favorites for that. But that featured content is just one way to look at the text. You can certainly look at all of them, which is a lot. You can pare down all of them by Lexile range, by grade level, by theme. So if you're reading something about fate and free will, and you really wanted to limit the library down to fate and free will, and you're teaching ninth graders, so you need to limit it even further. Now it's going to have that narrowed down to 18 texts that you can look at. There are so many different ways, though, to search the library. For English teachers, I really like browsing by book. So right now I'm reading A Raisin in the Sun with my freshmen. I can go here and it actually gives me texts to pair with A Raisin in the Sun. And another thing that I really like about that is this when and how to pair. I'm going to go back here. When and how to pair explains when you ought to bring this into your reading of the story. So this high incomes don't bring you happiness. You saw when I clicked on that, it opened up a new window. And this is what the texts look like. Now, first of all, across the top here, you have the text tab, but you also have paired text. So other texts in the collection can be paired with this text, and it'll give you some suggestions for how to make connections between those. Generally, there's related media. So sometimes they are YouTube videos or TED Talks, things that deal with some of the issues that might be brought up in the text. It'll give you the answer key, so you can see all of the questions and the correct answers. It generally gives you a suggested response for the one or two kind of short essay responses. There's a parent guide here. I think that's if you're a homeschooler. So it kind of helps parents to understand that. I don't really use that tab very much. But back at this text tab, there are a lot of different buttons here as well. So this read aloud button shows up for students, and it does allow them to have the text read aloud to them. Now, I don't think it's a really great um, theatrical reading of the text, but certainly it might be helpful for students who see words that are unfamiliar and want to hear someone else pronounce the word. There's also an annotation feature where students can add annotations, and as a teacher, you'll see that I can assign students a specific annotation task. So I can give them something specific to look for. They can annotate the text. When they're doing that, it'll tell them to select text to highlight or add annotations. So I could select this text, and then over here, it gives me a spot to write my annotation here. And when a student added that annotation, then that would be something that I, as a teacher, would be able to see in the back end once they submitted. So you can ask students to do specific annotations on a text, and then you can take a look at those once they've submitted that and give them some feedback on that as well. So that's kind of a cool new feature to this. They can also change the font size, so they can make it smaller, or they can make it larger, which is nice for students who need a little bigger text. There's also, you'll see when I go into the assignment panel, when I click this, I'm not going to do that quite yet, but when I do, you'll see that I have the option to do what's called guiding questions. Now, I don't have to assign these guiding questions, but if I do, what's going to happen is it'll show the text up to this first question, and then all of this text afterward, from basically here on down, is going to be blurred out for the students. So they will only be able to read up to that first question, and they will have to answer a comprehension question about this text up to this point, and they have to get the right answer before they can move on. So if I just randomly picked C, it's going to tell me, nope, you're wrong, bad answer. And then I pick A and realize, there we go, I've got the right answer. And you will see in the teacher pane, once they submit, how many attempts it took them to get the correct answer on these guided reading questions. When they are done, then they can do the assessment questions. Again, this is something, they are not getting instant feedback on the assessment questions. They will not get the feedback until you return the assignment to them. And then they have discussion questions, which are not really part of the online assessment. That's something that you could maybe have students write about later, or you could discuss those things in a virtual discussion. But those are just some discussion suggestions. The assessment, though, is something that they would complete online. And generally, there is at least one written response in the assessment that then you would have to evaluate and give a score of 0 to 4 based on the quality of their response. And I do have a rubric for that. If you're interested in seeing that, I'd be happy to send that to you. It just gives my students a guide for what a 4 means versus a 2, for instance, so that they understand what they need to work toward to get the full points for one of those written responses. So you'll see when I assign the text, again, if I have Google Classroom, it's kind of a cool thing because I'm going to assign this text to my Deering English 1 class. Now I can choose one or more individual students to assign it to, so I could assign it to a small group of students, or I can assign it to my whole class. I also see that they have an annotation task here. You can change that. This is a suggested annotation task, but you can certainly type in your own annotation task for students to do. Here is where you enable that guided reading mode if you want to. So if you click on yes, you can either have that for the entire class, Or if you have one or more individual students who you know really need that, you can add those students in there. I typically, with my freshmen, will do the entire class and then let them earn their way out of that. So I select a start date and a due date. If I assigned it today, I might give them 2 days to complete this. And then I'll hit assign, and it gives me the option to now post this assignment and scores to Google Classroom. So CommonLit will talk to Google Classroom. It's going to put that assignment on my Google Classroom page. This will be the post. I can certainly add more instructions to this if I want to. I'm going to put this is a test, not a real assignment, just in case any of them are on Classroom right now. And so you can see that I have my During English 1 class stream selected, and I hit share, and now it's going to tell me that it's syncing with Google Classroom. So what actually happened over here, if I look in Google Classroom, and I look in my stream, and it's probably still syncing, but eventually what will happen is that assignment will pop up in Classroom. There it is. And what I can do is I can drag it down here and put it where I want it in terms of my topics. So you can see when I open it in Classroom, there it is, CommonLit. The students are going to open it up, log in, and work on that. You can also see, let me see if I can open my calendar. You can see that it has posted that assignment to my English 1 calendar, which, see, it would show up if it were actually posted. There it is. So if I click on it there, it's on my classroom calendar, and it provides a link to that classroom assignment, which will then take them directly to the CommonLit website. So again, this is a really nice repository of great texts. I think the questions are challenging. I think that they definitely provide a nice accompaniment to things that you do. They even have entire units put together here. So if you were looking for something that's topical or thematic that's appropriate for your grade level, they have a 12th grade unit on morality. They have a thematic unit on values and beliefs. And when you look in there, you can see that what they've done is brought a whole bunch of texts together. So you can scroll down here and see they've put this entire unit together. They have dual texts, cross-textual questions, just a really rich set of readings all around a theme. So lots of different ways to use this. And again, the types of texts, the different genres that are available here, they have psychology texts, they have primary source documents. There are just a bunch of different kinds of texts here. So I think something that would be useful for many different disciplines, which is why I wanted to share that with you today. And then you'll see in the assignments pane, you can see that that's where you manage your assignments. You can tell how many students have completed that assignment. If they're done and they've submitted, it'll tell you you have things to grade. So that's where you go in and grade those written things. The other things will auto grade. And then you get all kinds of data on the assignment. So you can see, again, those guided reading responses by student. You can see how students did on all the questions. You can see other metrics, like it'll group your most struggling students with the high achievers. There's just a whole lot of data that comes out of this for each assessment in the dashboard. Now, I'm not sure, it'll show you maybe, yeah, right now it's just going to say not started yet. And then once you have all of them graded and you release, it will send those scores back to Google Classroom for your records. So I hope that you'll take some time to peruse this and think about using it. Thanks.